What can brands do to kind of lessen the participation barriers that they see with their customer experience and customer loyalty programs?
That's a good question, and we've done a fair amount of research on this, and have published some thought leadership, because everyone, of course, is interested in how can I keep my business humming through disruptions like COVID. And some of the things that we suggest are really developing more and more micro audiences, micro segmentation strategies. And what that allows you to do is really start to attack, or maybe that's not friendly enough of a word, but really start to provide custom content that directly addresses the barriers that people are concerned about that might be keeping them from transacting. We've also looked at how we can use data and insights to understand somebody's readiness to re-engage with a brand, and can use that to also customize communications around reducing those barriers and giving people the assurances that it's either safe to transact again, or that whatever concern they have is something that we've put a lot of focus in mitigating, or the clients that we're working with have put a lot of focus in mitigating. I think some other things that we've seen come up quite a lot are diversifying how people can engage with the brand, and a lot of that's done through partnerships. So we have several travel clients, as I mentioned before, and with people not being able to get on a plane or stay in a hotel, how can we bring the experience of our client to the consumer in that in-between time? And one of the ways that's been really effective to do that is through a network of partners through which they can experience the bond with the brand, they can experience the connection with the brand, and we can keep those brands top of mind with those consumers in that in-between time. And then I guess the last one that I'll mention is really how can we help our clients be as nimble as possible, because things are changing on a minute by minute, hour by hour basis, and being able to adapt to signals, being able to rapidly deliver personalization across any touch point is something that we want to help our clients develop the tools, the people, the processes to be able to do.
I think that's the first part we see, is that people have all these things that they want to collect and get answers to, and it muddies kind of the experience of what they're actually trying to drive from an outcome perspective. So there's three things that I would say there. The first would be simplify, just to make it a better experience. Remove stress points and think about what you actually want. If you've got an overly complicated point system with rules that don't necessarily make logical sense, people are not going to want to really adopt that. Just focus on the transactions, the behaviors, and then the emotional driving that you want to achieve in very digestible chunks. You can always really expand the experience over time, but starting simple is really a good place always to be thinking. The next is connection. So if you think about CPG, travel, FI, telecom, they all have the same experience where you have a very specific part of the experience that is represented by them. So when you think about a trip, you're not just thinking about the plane, you're thinking about the end-to-end, the hotel, the Uber, all this that gets you to have that experience. HP is a great example. During the pandemic, when I moved my home office home, I discovered for the first time in many, many years that I needed a printer at home. And that seemed like a pretty check the box type of purchase. But when I went through the experience with HP, who's actually one of our clients at Kobie, I found that I was drawn toward the way that they made printing actually fun again. So while I'm stuck at home with my kids, they enabled a lot of arts and crafts and experiences online to really give templates and advice. They made automating the file storage that I have interesting. So I didn't just think about it at the moment that I hit the print and gosh, I hope this HP works, but it had me thinking of that every single time I created an experience of great, I'm so glad I have a printer that enables that. And then lastly is enabling action. And so what we mean here is think about what this is meaning to the consumer. So HP is a great example I just talked about. Best Buy, on the other hand, what they really did was they changed up their messaging during the pandemic to say what a home office means. So it wasn't just, save here by buying your office chair for home that you're going to use for a year, but what are the benefits of having an office at home? And how can you create this in a way that's going to actually, enhance your life in a way that maybe isn't as disruptive as all the other things we experienced during this time?
I think the first is simplify, make it easy. From the sign up process to interacting to redeeming, just make it seamless. Don't have 15 fields for a customer to fill out to join your loyalty program. Capture their name and email, and then maybe later on offer them bonus points for giving you more information about them, linking their social handles, giving you their birthday, things like that. And then on top of that, you want to give customers a lot of different ways in which they can interact with your brand and your program. So it shouldn't really be about, earning rewards to pick, a standard pool of items or services. It should really span the whole customer experience and provide customers with options. Maybe you have a customer who's, thrilled to write product reviews and share your products on their social media pages. Make sure you're rewarding that type of advocacy. Other customers might be really responsive to things like weekly promotions or gamification. Think about how you can touch the entire customer experience with loyalty across marketing, sales, and service.
Kind of like a loaded question. I feel like we could probably talk about this for a few hours, but I think at the highest level, it is important for brands, imperative in fact, to understand what their data is telling them, to not be prescriptive in the way that they're going about their strategies, creating the appropriate strategy distilled from that data, what the brands, what the consumers are saying, and making sure that we're refining those strategies at all times to make sure that, again, keep on saying relevant and accurate, but the consumers' expectations are just that. And so I think it's imperative that we do.
And this is what I love again about talking about it, because you've had surveys, you presented them, right? And what will you be willing to fill out and why? It's the ultimate question. To me, simplicity is key, personalization, contextualization, all those must be done. If I want you to respond to me, doing so selfishly with a bunch of questions to tell me how great I am isn't going to get me there. Instead, again, let's talk about the experience that I'm trying to measure, and let me be very specific to that and ask very specific questions. If I ask you a question about how was your shopping experience generally, I'm going to get back a general answer. And plus, oftentimes you're only going to get the extremes. You're going to get the people that are very dissatisfied or the people that are very satisfied, right? What about all those other ones, the voices that you're losing? So figuring out how to ask that question in the proper way that's more about their experience and not your experience is what I find is key. So contextualizing it, making it key. There's also a lot of data out there. We have a lot of white papers as well on how to incentivize the right responses, how to build that into a program. And really the key that I find is really, again, I think I keep talking about it over and over again, but getting the idea of the strategy up front as to what are you trying to elicit, what information are you trying to gather, rather than just throwing it out there with a broad net, saying, let me see how people just think about me and let me give a love index to it, right? Instead it's, yeah, but what do you think about this, where I see you're having friction? What about this, where I feel like you're not getting the most delightful experience? What are those elements that I can trigger off of? And let me ask you about those. To me, that raises your response rate, gives more value, and gives more insight.
And it almost seems like common sense, right? But in reality, sometimes it is hard to execute on sometimes. But ultimately, it really is about focusing on the speed, simplicity, accessibility, and value. From a technology standpoint, usually this is addressed via SSO and making sure that the program is accessible across all your channels, and that the customer doesn't need to log in every time, for example. For the customer, it's all about speed and ease of use. The perceived value of the program must be equal to or greater than the amount of effort involved for the customer to participate. For example, if the core earn mechanic is receipt upload, it needs to be no more than 2 to 3 step process for the consumer to upload the receipt. Or similar type of thing. If they're asked to refer a friend, this needs to be a 1 to 2 click process, so on and so forth. And then from the marketer's standpoint, it's, as well as the customer team, it's really just as important too. The tools that they have need to be able to they need to enable them to quickly deploy communications, promotions, provide ad hoc benefits, and depending on the situation, for example, a TikTok customer goes off on social saying, hey, my points didn't come through, or hey, I had this bad experience. How do you respond to that? Do we have the tools to be able to respond to that immediately? So ultimately, this ties to back into what we talked about earlier in regards to integrating loyalty with the overall ecosystem. And channeling that data from multiple sources and having alignment amongst the customer service teams and experience teams.